All right. Good morning. Here we go. A little bit of news here and there coming out today, but of course I'll be watching 2 hockey games again today. I'm doing 2 reviews. And Finland-Slovakia is the first game of the day. That is not one of the 2 that I'm going to review. So Germany's against Switzerland. That starts at 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 o'clock Pacific. Germany has 2 points. Switzerland has none. Switzerland is fighting for their lives, so I figure, you know what? That could be a very entertaining game. We'll see whether or not Germany can keep it going. And, of course, I will watch Sweden against Russia at 6:30 my time, which is Pacific, and 9:30 Eastern. Both of them have 6 points. They're tied with the USA for first in that group. That's the tougher of the 2 groups, obviously. And here we go. So, yeah, and for Finland, they'll be playing against Canada tomorrow for first in that division. So things are getting interesting at the World Juniors. Bob McKenzie has I retweeted it like moments before starting this video. Has a discussion. Bob McKenzie has a discussion about the lack of parity at this tournament, which is nothing really new. But again, the tournament's going to get more attention right now than normal because the NHL's not playing. Again, I normally tune in just for the medal round anyways. It's really all about who's going to make the medal round in which order, because it's not like you go from 10 teams to 2. You go from 10 teams to 8. So only 2 teams miss the medal round, and then you have your quarterfinals from there. Now, news out of the Vancouver side of things, Rick Dollywell's reporting that the Canucks have looked at Sami Vatanen. They've kicked the tires on him. What this says is the Canucks are aware that they need more depth on the blue line, which is not news to Canuck fans. Now, of course, if you're a Canuck fan as well, what else is on the board that may interest you is that McEwen is on waivers. And in 2014, he was the draft pick the Canucks gave up in a trade that Canuck fans didn't like at the time. And then McEwen was going to be a star because that was the guy that was traded in the deal. McEwen has not become a star. So since he's a right-hand defenseman, there will be Canuck fans today clamoring. There'll be those in the comment section below this video too saying, all right, so let's get McEwen. I don't think they do. And again, look for players to be on waivers early because teams know they can sneak these guys through earlier rather than later once we get through training camp and all that. So McEwen may very well be on waivers from Carolina right now because they don't want to lose him. So we'll see whether or not Benning picks him up. I don't think he does. I'd be very surprised if the Canucks pick up McEwen. Going back to the top of the board, of course, last night, Podkolzin has 2 goals and an assist against Austria. And this is where things get interesting, too. So, you know, Austria, not a team that looks like they're prepared, or a team that looks like they necessarily belong at this level. Now, I remember reporting last year on them beating Belarus to make it into this tournament. It was a good story, and it still is. And they'll be back in next year's tournament as well because there's no relegation going on after this year. But what happens with these games, and we've seen it with Canada as well, with these games against Switzerland as well as against Germany, is you really prop up your point totals. You really beef up your scoring totals. And I think it raises expectations maybe higher than they should be. I've never said Podkolzin's a bust. I've never said that it's necessarily a big deal that Podkolzin was dropping from the KHL to the MHL to the VHL. I didn't even say it was a big deal necessarily that Podkolzin was off to a slow start with Russia. But he gets 2 goals and an assist last night. He plays really well. And yeah, Twitter lights up with people going, hey, there you go. And I know people will say, well, that's just Twitter. That's not really reality. Yeah, no, there's enough people on Twitter that when you look at the reactions on there, it does kind of reflect how a lot of fans feel. The pressure on these kids, and they're kids, and when you see them without their helmets and when you see them without all the gear, you're like, yeah, it's a teenage kid. And that's what they all are. The amount of pressure on them is insane, and there's at least started to become some sort of a pushback against some of the parents at some of these kids' games too, how they'll get so intense and so just, it's that thing where parents will live vicariously through their kids. And, you know, it can create a toxic atmosphere. And sometimes the fans can create some of that toxicity as well. These are kids. I'm you know, fully in support of all of them from all the countries. And whether they make the NHL or not, we'll see. But it's one tournament. It's a couple of weeks. A lot of these kids haven't been playing hockey this year. This has been a completely different year than any other. So It can be understandable for some players to get off to slow starts. It can be understandable for things to be kind of all over the place. But I'll be interested to see how Podkolzin does tonight against Sweden. This is the big test. But again, if Podkolzin comes up short against Sweden, I'll be interested to see if some of the same people are like, hey, look at him against Austria, then say, oh yeah, but against a real country like Sweden, he's no good. It's insane, the amount of pressure put on these kids. Don't write them off as busts until they're, 24? Maybe, 24, you might be safe in saying they're busts. But even then, there's some that are just really late bloomers. Especially defensemen and goaltenders. You can see late bloomers with goaltenders. Look no further than Jack Campbell, who when Dallas traded him off, he wasn't going to have an NHL career, and then the Kings turned him around. So Podkolzin, we'll see what the public sentiment is with him after tonight's game. Ryan Callahan has officially announced his retirement. Of course, last year, due to a degenerative back condition, he said he was never going to play again. So his back issue forced him out. Of course, his contract gets traded over to the Ottawa Senators, but he's made it official now that contract's done. He is officially retired. 757 games played between New York and Tampa. 186 goals, 200 assists, 386 points. Pretty solid career for Ryan Callahan. Those games will be on tonight. Like I said, I'll be doing reviews of both Germany, Switzerland, as well as Sweden and Russia. I'll probably combine them onto the same board. I'm looking forward to doing those later. Tortorella, in a Zoom call interview situation, said he sees Domi, Koivu, and Grigorenko as bringing added leadership. And I think that's important, that you have that positive feeling about the players that are coming in, and you let them know, hey, here's the expectation. Grigorenko, I have to say, low-key, might be one of those signings we look back on a couple years from now and say, that was actually really smart. And if he flames out, if it doesn't work out again, well, it's not like they're paying $3-4 million for Grigorenko's services either. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Columbus this year, because last year we wrote them all off. That's part of the reason I didn't write them off this year, because I remembered what happened last season. I said, okay, they'll probably end up being able to do that again. But in the division that they're in, there's the possibility they don't make the playoffs. It's not the group of death. They're kind of lucky they're not in the East, but the Central, there's the possibility that, and it would require a pretty strong run from Dallas, I would think, to force them down, or Nashville, because Carolina and Tampa should be the top two teams, but Columbus is right there, and I think they can be third in that division. So we'll see. I do have faith in Tortorella. He's been around the block a few times. He's pretty good at evaluating players. We'll see how it goes. Keep in mind, training camps open tomorrow. So the training camps for the 7 teams that missed the play-in, they start getting on the ice tomorrow. January 3rd is the date for the 24 others. So no, they don't get much of a head start. But after this amount of time off, and for 8 other teams, they were eliminated after playing 5 or less games. That's all they've played since March. Half the league has only played a maximum of 5 games since March. So while Tampa Bay and Dallas might feel a little bit tired, other than that, the other teams should be pretty good, because they've basically had the equivalent to 2 off seasons, because you had from March until August, and then for a lot of them from August until January. So they should be pretty healthy, pretty good to go, and that's going to be the fun thing this year. Is while we're hearing about injuries that guys have been going through, or illness in the case of Jonathan Toews, and it might feel like, wow, this is just crazy. In reality, we should see a much healthier overall NHL to start the season, injury-wise, than we would normally see. So it'll be fascinating to see how long that lasts. Can Colorado and Pittsburgh make it through to the end of the first game without 3 or 4 injuries? That'll be a key thing. Because last year, every time you turn around, Pittsburgh, St. Louis as well, Colorado, there were certain teams that just, the injuries were crazy. And of course, with the taxi squads, with the COVID-19 precautions as well, we'll see how crazy things get this year. It's going to be a very, very interesting season. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happen to browse onto this video. Welcome and thank you. And hey, thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.